Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm Andy RC and today I'm going to be checking out the full speed BeeBee 66. This is a one cell brushless tiny whoop style model and I'm looking forward to checking this out because some of you may know I'm a huge fan of Full Speed RC. In fact, it's a very small company. Lewis from Full Speed, he builds most of these himself. So let's take a look at the specs. So it's a 66mm frame. We have got Full Speed branded motors, but they're actually a rebrand of Sunny Sky motors. They are 0703 15,000 kV, and that links up to the same stack that was in the Full Speed BAT. So we've got 6 amp 4-in, 1 BL Heli S ESCs, and then that connects to a omnibus flight controller up here with a built-in on-screen display. So yes, this is a tiny whoop style model with a built-in on-screen display and brushless motors. Now, this has been sent to me from Full Speed as the plug and fly, but I would really recommend getting the bind and fly version. The reason for that is, in order to get this in here, they've had to flip around the flight controller upside down and also have it at an angle. So if you want to solder in a receiver, you basically have to take all of this apart. You have to take these screws out here, and then you've got some screws underneath there, and you have to lift the flight controller up, fold it over, and then solder up the receiver. I'm actually using the U-Sky receiver. I actually found a use for it. It's something like 0.36 grams. It's a 3.3 volt FreeSky receiver, so it runs in D8 mode. Yeah, so it's tricky finding a receiver small enough for this, but that one fits in there nicely. So there's a 3.3 volt pad on here, and there's also a 5 volt pad, so you can choose whichever one you want, and that runs on the UART 3. And then we've got a tiny all-in-one camera. It's a 25 milliwatt 48 channel. You've got the button at the front there for switching between PAL and NTSC on a long press, and then a short press flips the image upside down. And then you've got a long press on the back button to go through the different bands, and a short press to go through the individual channels. We have got a sleeve dipole antenna coming out the top there. I've also routed the antenna here for my receiver as well. We've got a 3D printed camera mount here. So it's not molded plastic like the Bold Clash, for example. I think that's probably going to be this one's competition. However, this one, like I say, unlike the Bold Clash, has an on-screen display. So yeah, it weighs just 28 grams, which is amazing. And then with the included battery, which is a high volt battery, one cell of course, it weighs 34 grams, so a very lightweight model. In fact, you could probably lose even more weight if you wanted to take this canopy off here. And you can actually take this little carbon plate off here as well, and you can just run it without them. So yeah, this carbon plate here, I think it's just 1 mil thick carbon. And you might think, well, that'll break. But with it being such a lightweight model, I've found it to be fine so far in crashes. We've got these little 3D printed mounts underneath here as well. So yeah, I guess you could say it's a little bit DIY, but it still seems pretty good quality. And if I know Full Speed, then it's probably going to fly really well because the BAT 100 flew really well. No brownouts or anything like that, which is incredible for on-screen display and everything there. So yeah, the battery, it's a high volt, it's 250 milliamps there. It's using a MCPX style connector, or 2mm JST pitch, I think they call that. Actually comes with a high volt charger, a little tiny USB thing. You just plug that in there, and when it's fully charged, you get a blue LED on there, so it's quite nice. You get that. You also get given this little tiny adapter for the USB connector as well, which I'm glad about because you can see it's completely in the way of the motors there, and it's really tricky to get a USB cable in there. I actually can if I remove the props. So these little tiny 40mm props, you're only given one set, but I guess the idea is that you're not going to damage them. And that's pretty much everything that you get. No instructions, which is unfortunate. You get a couple of rubber bands for the battery to just slot in underneath there. And it seems like a really nice package. So I have set it up in Betaflight, so I think it's flashed with 3.17 rather than 3.2. So I went in there and put my modes in. I bound it to the Taranis. Obviously, the U-Sky receiver, it's a little bit tricky binding. You have to short 2 pads on the receiver. So yeah, tricky to rebind it if you need to, but I don't, so it shouldn't be a problem. Yeah, so one thing that I did do was up the digital idle speed, because when I was testing it without the propellers and I was moving the stick, some of the motors were stopping. I could see them stopping on fast yaw movements. So I've upped that to about 6, I think. And I've also put my own rates in there, because full speed, they have their own rates that they like, but I've changed all mine to 0.8. I've moved some of the on-screen display around a little bit as well, but the setup was pretty easy, I have to say. I also put the command in set small underscore angle equals 180, just in case it gets stuck. And yeah, it's got D-Shot 600 enabled on it, so if you want to do turtle mode and all that, if you want to flash version 3.2, then you can do that. So pretty incredible for a little tiny thing. And yeah, I think that is everything, so let's go and take it for a fly and see how it performs. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick line of sight flight indoors. So the punch on this one, it's very similar to what you'd expect from a brushed tiny whoop. So I think it has just slightly less power than the Bold Clash, but it's not far off. It's quite a noisy model. It's not as noisy as the Bat 100 is, because we've got different props. But it's not as quiet as an actual tiny whoop, I don't think. And that is all of the power. But we don't have any drift whatsoever, which is great. So just angle mode here, and I'm probably going to be staying in angle mode. Just perfect for indoors, I think. And it's really stable. Yep, it's flying nice. Enough punch for indoors for sure. It's hovering at above 50%, but the Bold Clash was the same, and it sort of has all of its power at that sort of top end of the throttle. The power delivery feels really smooth. Not seeing any vibrations or anything like that. So I think the stock tune will be fine for indoors. Really controllable, and I like it so far. So on to the FPV footage, and the stock camera was a little bit too aggressive for flying inside the house, and it's stuck like that because it's in a little 3D printed mount. And because the quadcopter was always in forward motion because of the camera angle, I kept bashing into stuff, so I decided to remove the 3D printed mount and use a sticky pad along with the spare rubber bands that they give you in the package, and that secured the camera on the top, and I was able to get a flatter camera angle. And at the same time, I was able to lose a bit of weight as well, so that little 3D printed mount along with the screws weighs 1.9 grams, and you might think that's not much, but with a copter this small, it does make a difference. And you can see there in the mirror, the camera just on top there, along with the rubber band, and it is facing flat. So the video reception was really good. You'll see here I go into this back room and I usually get dropouts there, but I am using the Bandicoot antenna from Menace in conjunction with the real ACC Pro Plus Diversity module on my Fatshark HD3s, and it really does make a difference, so you need to bear that in mind. The flight time was actually quite short, at just 2.5 minutes. I think 3 minutes was the longest flight that I got with it, and I think that is down to the fact that we are pushing the limits here. We're using a 1S battery, we've got an on-screen display here, powering the camera, the ESCs and motors. It's a lot, despite it being a high volt battery as well. So yeah, a short flight time with this. I do think that if you remove the prop protectors, you'll be able to save a little bit more weight as well, and you are able to do that with this model, which is nice. I did fly it outdoors, but even in calm weather, it just didn't have the power to battle light breezes, so I would say that this is an indoor flyer only. And yeah, you can see the battery running out there, so I'll put a link in the description if you wish to get one. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.